anything.
Okay, welcome. Hello, Bjorn, Peter, Omana. Congratulations on your first ever online conference for Electronics Watch. Hurrah!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant event, like really successful. I know I enjoyed each of the 8 amazing sessions that happened, and I've heard that we had a huge turnout as well, from 180 people attending from 33 countries, including 47 representatives from the public sector, 62 from NGOs and civil society organizations, as well as trade unionists, lawyers, academics, and business representatives. So a huge success, really. So congratulations. And this time, of course, the focus was on occupational health and safety, which was very exciting, with the aim to make the case that workers' occupational health and safety is fundamental to supply chains, to resilient supply chains. So my first question in this kind of roundup of the conference is, what was the decision? Why did you decide to spotlight this issue in particular?
Well, in one word, the corona pandemic. Normally at this time of year, we have an in-person conference. We look forward to having it next year, we hope, but we obviously couldn't have an in-person conference this time, so we had to do something virtual. And of course, with the public health crisis globally, we thought it made a lot of sense to highlight health and safety, and particularly then health and safety for workers. And what we, of course, have realized is, through many years of monitoring right now, is that this corona pandemic is just the very latest threat to workers' health in the electronic supply chain. Health and safety has always been fundamental to workers' concern. There's nothing more, as one of the keynote presenters said, there's simply nothing more important to workers than knowing that they go to work and they can come home and they can still have their life and they can still have their health. So it's obviously a core concern for workers, but we also knew that occupational health and safety is really an acute concern for the public buyers that we work with. And a lot of them are procuring medical technologies, or they're procuring essential goods for their own populations, and their responsibility is one to protect the people in their own jurisdictions, right, through the procurement that they do. And they know they can't do that while putting other workers' lives in jeopardy. And and as you mentioned also in introduction here, this is all about dealing with the corona pandemic is all about also resilient supply chains. And they understand, the public buyers understand, that if workers are sick in their supply chains, then obviously they don't have resilient supply chains. And then, their own people in their own jurisdictions also suffer. So for all of these reasons, we felt it was very timely to focus on occupational health and safety.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And either of you want to jump in?
Well, I think one of the issues that kind of added to the depth of this conference was that Björn and Omana were working for the last, I think, 12 months on our occupational health and safety guidance, and we have also now set up an expert panel on occupational health and safety. So kind of it broad initiative, because we know how important this issue is for workers and for public buyers.
Absolutely. And we heard from so many workers and NGOs and trade unions on the many diverse issues that workers are facing in their own workplace. And to me, it really highlighted that the diversity of challenges faced, the risks faced, all based on the very specific workplaces and environments, the production line, the production process, that can make this feel quite overwhelming. But there were some really interesting common themes that were coming through from the workers in particular, and lessons learned that I found. I wondered whether you might be able to share some of those particular themes or topics that came through from the side of the workers.
Before I respond to that, I want to say a little bit about our guidance, because I think we've really put in a lot of work and brought in a lot of experts to really help us through this process, because there's like hundreds and hundreds of chemicals used in the production of chemicals, right? I mean, electronics. And where do we start and what do we focus on, and how can we really make a difference to workers' exposures to chemicals? And so through a lot of work, we've now identified 28 chemicals, out of which we want 12 taken out completely from the supply chains and another 16 to be used with adequate controls in place so worker exposure doesn't happen to those chemicals. And this is like our first step to a lot of work we're going to put in this area. About the common themes, of course, we heard time and time again, not just in workers in the electronics sector, but we heard it even in garments and in mining, the fact that workers don't really know what they're working with, what chemicals they are working with, the importance of the right to know, about transparency of the supply chains, right? And the fact that they are not able to organize and represent themselves and really call for how they can make their workplaces safe. So this is something fundamental, and you would think that by now in 2020 people would have these rights, but we're still talking about these basics even now, right? And like one of our speakers in the session on women workers and reproductive health said, and as you know, in this sector, majority of the workers are young women workers. And if a woman worker is pregnant, every day she goes to work is bring your child to work day. And I guess we don't even realize the enormity of what employers are subjecting their workers to in the long run in terms of consequences. So these discussions we had at the summit, I think, was really important to bring this out to the open, especially for public buyers and procurers who are there to come and listen and reflect on what actions they can take.
I would add on the theme of, what does safety considerations for workers in all positions have in common? So Omana mentioned the occupational health and safety panel. This is a panel of experts who will be able to advise our affiliates and also our monitoring partners. Expertise implies technicalities. And of course, the issue of chemicals in the workplace is a highly technical subject. But what I was going to say is that safety, health and safety, is not just technical. For all workers, it's also a social issue. It's a matter of the social organization. How is production, how's the work organized in the factory? So, are you working on piecework? Do you have production quotas? If you have production quotas, if you have to produce a certain number of pieces, that creates stress. Stress in itself is a psychological issue. It can lead to tensions, can lead to conflicts between the workers and the security and management, as a couple of presenters said. But it also means that you are maybe in a rush. You put safety second. Then you have this 24-hour production schedule. So you have 12-hour shifts. 12-hour shifts are incredibly tiring. Then other people, when they talked about safety, didn't just talk about what we would think about, the machine guards or chemicals or electrical or fire hazards and so on. They also talked about wages, low wages as a safety issue, because you work, if you earn so little that you cannot get in sufficient nutrition, as a couple of our presenters mentioned, you're tired, at the end of the day. If you're sick and tired, you're not going to be safe. And others mentioned also the rising gender-based violence in workplaces. That comes with additional stress, perhaps exacerbated by the corona crisis right now. So I think that these social issues are really common to all workers, and something that is a matter of worker organization, and is why also it is so important that workers do have a right to know and can participate in the decision making about workplace safety, as Omana mentioned.
I think what I found kind of eye-opening was the fact that it just Björn related to so nicely, is kind of that health and safety goes beyond the workplace. It is about safety of your food. You get enough food, and this is very much linked to how supply chains are working, what they are focusing on. They are focusing on lowering cost as much as possible. And this is why we see these issues all over the place. It's not only electronics, it's not only garments, it's not only mining, it's basically in every supply chain you look at one point you will find health and safety issues because it is about lowering cost. It is not about resilience. It is not about the interest of the workers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the key themes that came through was that health and safety, I suppose, isn't an add-on at all. And in a way, it was really interesting to see so many different speakers look at health and safety almost as if it was a lens through which to understand the kind of levels, different levels and experience of exploitation. So thank you so much. And I suppose this moves us on to
actually on that theme. Sorry, one really important theme that came out during the conference too, health and safety as the lens to understand exploitation, is that workers are. All workers are not just workers. Workers also live in communities. Workers are consumers. That means if they're handling toxic substances at work, they are exposed twice. They're exposed in the workplace and they're exposed in the communities. If they work in mines, mines contaminate also downstream. Mm-hmm. So not only do they suffer double exposure, but there's also many speakers pointed out a double standard, which means that workers are exposed to these toxics in the workplace at the level of many times, as much as 1,000 times that which is allowed in the communities and environment. I think that's a really important point. Workers are second-rate citizens in this regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the Right to Know session, I remember some of the speakers talking about who has the right to know and who are the stakeholders beyond the worker, the local community, the families. Actually, when we're looking at the kind of impact that these industries have on society, we're not only looking at the workers. And so then the question arises, what is the responsibility of business when this is the kind of reality that we're facing?
Well, that's the good question, right? And I think what we have seen in many of these panels is that, and especially with people that have experience either because they have been working in this industry, or have kind of the direct connection with the industry as they are buyers, is that they know that the industry could be delivering. They understand also that it may actually make sense from a business point of view to deliver on occupational health and safety, on resilience, on worker engagement. And we also heard in the sustainable finance session that it actually, even from investors' perspective, it makes sense to deliver on this. So why don't they? That's a huge question. I think one piece of information we got is that there is a culture, and this was discussed by at least two speakers. There is a culture in the electronics industry to be non-transparent and to not engage with workers. And because this industry has developed through the last 60, 70 years in this culture, it is really hard to break it up, because that's how we have been always doing it. So let's just do it again. And I think this is something that public procurement can actually work towards incentivizing, changing this culture.
Absolutely. Please, Bjorn or Amana, did you want to add anything as well on the role of business?
One of the speakers was telling in terms of what can public procurement do. Like, we have all these problems we are talking about in terms of workers' exposure to chemicals. And I remember they gave some very simple solutions, which is actually easily doable for public procurers, to ensure in contracts we make sure that if women workers are suffering from spontaneous abortions, or they need to go on maternity leave, or they're having some, reproductive health problems. Right now, many a time in workplaces, they don't get paid leave for this. And these are like basics. These are easily enforceable. We can make sure that, as a worker who works in a workplace, that these basic rights are covered. Simple changes we can make. In terms of chemical identification, make sure the unions and the workers know what chemicals they are working with. Make sure they get access to safety data sheets. And businesses can, if they wish to, can easily enforce these things without a lot of extra costs. No, if you want a workplace to be productive, make sure your workers are healthy. This is, this is like.
I guess I would just highlight the importance of long-term thinking for business. And I think that, you know, if business takes seriously and engage conscientiously in robust social dialogue, that will help them to think long-term. Just one example of this, there's a major semiconductor company in Asia just had several months of collective bargaining. They have an independent union, and they had several months of collective bargaining. And in the end, they agreed to provide paid sick leave to workers who contract COVID. This makes a lot of sense for the workers, obviously, but it makes a lot of sense also for the business. You know, if a worker doesn't get paid sick leave when they're COVID, they're more likely to go to work, they're more likely to infect others, and they're more likely to impair that business's resilience. They may have to shut down. That's obviously is not good for the business. So, you know, having this kind of process of really negotiating this agreement with the union, that actually helped, I think, this business to think long term. And that helped them, I think, hopefully this is true, to become, you know, to protect their business.
And just to add on this, I think the long-term perspective is where public procurement comes in. Public procurement is often hailed as this, oh, they have so much market power. And I always say, yes, market power, that's quite important, but much more important are contract lengths. You're looking at contracts that are 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 7 years long. So in this time span, if you are a big buyer and you actually do want to engage with your supply chain, you have time to talk to them, you have time to put pressure on them, and they understand that they will not be able to wiggle out and just hold up a certificate and say everything is fine, but you will come back and you will ask the questions. And I think that's the most important part for public buyers. Ask the questions, start asking, start demanding information, start reviewing the information, start going to stakeholders that actually know about this information. This does not have to be Electronics Watch. You can go to any other expert civil society organization or union and just show them the data that you have received as public buyer and ask them, does this make sense? And if it does not, go back to your supplier and just tell them, this is not making sense, please give me your data. If you do this on a long-term basis, there will be a change, because this industry and many others, but electronics especially, has not been used to have to answer questions. They have never answered questions, so we have to make them to understand they will need to answer questions increasingly, more questions, and their answers have to be increasingly better and go deeper.
Yeah, it was really inspiring, wasn't it, to hear, sorry, Amana, that like the way in which so many public buyers were really pushing, and thus the kind of the boundaries of what is possible within public procurement and within those contracts. But yeah, please, if you were going to add something, do.
Yeah, I was going to actually add on to what Peter was saying. We actually had an interaction in the summit where we had public buyers, experts, monitoring partners on the ground, all sitting together and discussing. The public buyers like, now tell me, what kind of questions should I ask? How do I do this better? You know, what should I be looking for? And while that exchange and interaction was happening in the summit, I was like, this is what we need to do. We need to create these spaces in the future where we bring all these different groups we work with together so that we can be really effective in our interventions. And I really think we should do more of this in terms of meetings or seminars, or I don't know what to call it, but we should do more like this in the future.
Yeah, it's extraordinary in a way how seeing these like unlikely actors come together to discuss and share and ask questions are really fascinating.
Yeah, it can be really powerful, you know, when people who are working entirely different realms day to day find common ground.
Exactly.
You know, the panel that Omana was just discussing, you know, at the public procurement representative there, she wanted to know from these experts, so what should I now ask my suppliers to drive these issues further? And then we started talking about the precautionary principle, right? Which is, all experts know this is fundamental to basic worker protections, you know, from toxic chemicals. And, you know, so, you know, I could see this public buyer sort of thinking in the back of her head here, okay, we can now have a, you know, I can now have a pre-market engagement process with my supplier. I can start talking about the precautionary principle there. And then, you know, assuming that there's not a blanket no there, suppose I won't get any bid, then I write this into my contracts, and then this becomes a law. You know, the precautionary principle is a law and enforceable, which is really, you know, quite interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
It made me, I was really excited watching that, to be frank, and I can see we can do a lot more. This is just the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that leads me to my final question, perhaps then. What are the next steps for Electronics Watch then, beyond this conference? And what do you think will be the priorities for coming year?
I think for affiliates, so what we have seen in the conference are kind of, you know, this is kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, but that's the avant-garde of public buyers. That's the leaders. That's people and organizations that have been doing it for the last 5, 10, 15 years. So they have kind of already established and developed organizational procedures. But getting affiliates activated to start asking questions, simple questions. Sometimes it's just really simple questions, but be notorious about it. Come back, ask the question again, and really ask for the answer, and really demand an answer. This is something that we will see much more in the future, but this needs a lot of work from Electronics Watch side to really activate public buyers, to know that they should be doing it, to know that they can do it, and then to really do it.
Awesome.
For my part, I think what I'm really excited about in terms of the future work coming up in 2021 is our new advisory panel. We've got this group of experts globally, 12 of them, different expertise and people really well known in the field. Now we can really look at our monitoring going on the ground and some of the issues our public buyers face in terms of occupational health and safety, and how can these people actually answer the questions, and how can we really support the work, you know? We have now, I think what we can do has really exploded with this group of experts on our side. So I'm really excited to see what's going to come now in the future. It's going to be different, and I can feel it because we've already had small tests of it before the summit. Like we've had questions about something going on with monitoring on the ground and questions from public buyers. And we've gone to these experts and, you know, little things where you can see it really makes a difference now. So I think in the future, it's going to be very good. And I really want to see our advisory panel in full action in the future.
Yeah, exciting. I'm sure it will.
Indeed, they need to become busy people.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm excited about both the work with the affiliates, and I think that the more tools and guidance we can give them, the more active they will be, and the more they will actually become leaders and drivers to create safer workplaces in their supply chains. And the work with monitoring partners to strengthen their work. I think one thing that I would highlight that also came out of the conference is the question of what is effective due diligence. We talk about human rights due diligence a lot. There's guidances on due diligence coming out our ears. What public buyers want to know, I think, and what some of them said also is, how do I know that the due diligence I do is effective? How do I know that the company's due diligence is effective? In other words, that it is concretely improving workers' lives. And you know, and people said that you know, companies need to understand that due diligence, for example, does not end at the smelter stage in the supply chain, that it actually goes all the way to the mines, that companies need to be better at responding to identify the risks when as part of their due diligence, better traceability and better disclosure Transparency was a huge theme of the conference, I think, with one public buyer going as far as to say that, you know, we don't only have the right to this information, we actually have an obligation to know about our supply chains. So I think that, you know, due diligence is an accepted international framework by all parties, by government, by business, by trade unions. And I think that we can become much better at understanding what is effective due diligence and provide very concrete guidance among public buyers about what that is. And I think that if we do that, and if we create a common framework around due diligence, then companies will appreciate that too. You know, there'll be sort of the same level, same rules for everybody. And so, you know, something else that I am looking forward to is actually using the learnings from this event to build positive, constructive engagement with companies to drive these issues forward.
Excellent. Oh, thank you all very much. That was a terrific roundup and exciting things to come in the years ahead. So congratulations once again on a terrific conference. It's always so inspiring to see Electronics Watch not just sort of the network grow, but also the ambition. And I wish you all the very best of luck in the coming year, folks. So thank you, and thank you for this wonderful roundup and conference.
Thank you so much,
Rosie.
Rosie.